What happens when a woman, rejected by her own family, returns, silently, hiding her face? An old woman whom everyone thought had lost her memory suddenly utters a name that no one has spoken aloud in many years. What happened next did not just break the silence, it changed both of them forever. Sophia arrived early. The night dew had not yet dried on the porch, and the railing was wet, like an old person's hand. She was holding 2 plastic bags. One contained groats, the other an old woolen blanket with frayed corners. The collar of her coat was turned up. Her face was covered with a scarf, like a sick person afraid of a draft, and her eyes, the only thing visible, were blue. Not bright, but faded, like ink on an old letter. The guard opened the door, grunted something about always with bags, and stepped back into his booth. She nodded silently and walked down the corridor, which smelled of porridge, medicine, and something else, like wet diapers. She approached room 8. She knocked. No one answered. She went in. The old woman was lying with her back to the window, the blanket slipping to the floor. Sophia carefully picked it up, shook it, and covered her shoulders. The old woman did not react. Then Sophia went to the corner, laid out what she had brought on the table, put down a jar of apricot jam, homemade, and took a folding knife from her pocket to cut the dried threads on the pillow. Everything was silent, as if following a script written before her. "Who are you?" came a sudden voice from behind her. The voice was hoarse, but it had a tone that was impossible to forget if you had heard it once as a child. Sophia did not turn around. She continued to fiddle with the pillow. "You're always silent. Even when you're salting porridge, you're silent. Do you have a voice? Or are you ashamed?" Sophia exhaled slowly. A sharp hurt squeezed her throat, but she swallowed it down. "I'm just helping," she replied quietly, still not turning around. "There are many helpers like you. Come, fuss, and then don't even leave your name." Sophia smiled, the corners of her lips painfully. If she said her name, it would all be over. Or it would begin. The old woman had already turned away, rustling the blanket again. Water dripped from the ceiling, steady, like an IV drip. Sophia sat down on a stool, pushed away a woolen sock that had fallen off the foot of the bed, and wrapped herself in her own silence. In 40 minutes, another woman would take her place, loud and smelling of tobacco. She would jostle the old woman, force her to eat semolina porridge, and shout over her shoulder to the nurse, and Sophia would leave. She would walk down the narrow corridor again, nod to the guard again, and disappear into the city like a shadow. She left slowly, but something was beating unevenly in her heart, as if someone inside was trying to say, "Enough." A woman with white hair and a glassy stare remained behind the shabby windowsill. She stared at the door, saying nothing, but something stirred in her memory. Something blue. Something that had long since been erased from all the family albums. We have only just begun this story, but it will become even more painful and true. Stay to see what those who have been rejected are capable of. "You're too soft," said the woman in the white coat, carefully wiping the spoon on the edge of the bowl. "That's why everyone who can be bothered tramples all over you." Sophia didn't immediately realize that she was being addressed. She just sat on the edge of the bed, next to the sleeping old woman, and fiddled with the edge of the blanket. Gray cotton fibers clung to her fingernails. "Me?" she asked uncertainly. "Who else?" "I've been watching you," the woman said, sitting down on the windowsill with her legs crossed. "You come here every day, silent as a shadow. You bring her jam, fluff her pillow, and she doesn't even ask your name. Tell me honestly, are you a relative?" Sophia bowed her head slightly, as if she heard a distant ringing. "No," she replied, "just because." "That's it. Just because. And she, by the way, used to ruin other people's lives just because, back in the day. Don't believe me? Ask the older woman. Your grandmother was a real snake. Sophia remained silent. Not a single muscle on her face twitched. Only her eyes grew a little deeper. It was as if something that had been there for a long time had fallen away. Just don't get discouraged, the nurse continued. They're all so important here. And then they can't even put on their diapers. And you bake pancakes for them and iron their shirts. And they hardly ever say thank you. You need to be more assertive. Otherwise, your eyes look like you've been beaten. Sophia stood up. She adjusted the collar of her coat. She wanted to say, thank you. Go to hell. You don't know anything. All at once. But all she said was, I'm not doing it out of pity. And she left. The street smelled of dust and cold heat. This only happens in early autumn, when the leaves are still green, but already trembling with the approaching change. Sophia walked along the fence, her fingers clenching the handles of her bag, as if holding on to the past so that it wouldn't spill out onto the asphalt. Too soft, echoed in her head, like a splinter stuck under her fingernail. And it wasn't the first time she'd heard it. The same phrase in a slightly different tone. When she left. When she cried into her pillow at the boarding school. When she received a letter with no name and no, I'm sorry. She remembered how her grandmother looked through her, as if she wasn't there. As if the girl was a mistake, crumpled between soup and the news. And now that mistake had come to clean the chamber pot and rub cream into dry skin that had once rejected her hand. Sophia stopped at the crossroads. A bus rumbled past, clanking with iron. Someone behind her cursed, not at her, just the city, just noise. She stared ahead, unblinking. In the window of a kiosk, she saw her reflection, a woman in a worn coat, with a stubborn chin and eyes that said too much. Maybe it was true. Maybe she really was too soft. Or maybe none of this would have happened. But then, who would she have become? In the evening, she came home. A small room, the smell of burning tiles, a stack of letters with no addresses. She sat down by the window and unwrapped a rag doll she had hidden in her scarf. It was 100 years old. The doll had only one eye, blue, like the one lying now under the blanket, turned away from the window. Sophia ran her finger over the fabric and suddenly said quietly, I'm not soft. I just don't know how to take revenge. We've reached a turning point. What happens next will change everything. You can't miss the ending of this story. The room where Sophia lived smelled of mold and old wood. In the corner hung a tulle curtain, drooping like the shoulders of a tired woman. On the windowsill stood a can opener, a can of beans, and a box where everything was mixed together. Sewing thread, black and white photographs, a broken thermometer, an old comb with a few long hairs. She collected all this as if she were afraid of losing the very idea of someone's existence. In the refrigerator, there was tea, yesterday's soup, and a postcard attached with a magnet. It had a picture of a dog wearing glasses. There was no signature. Sophia didn't remember where it came from. Maybe someone left it there, or maybe she found it. The days were all the same. Wake up before dawn, drink boiling water with lemon, put on a coat and a scarf, and go again. The people at the nursing home already knew who she was. That is, they didn't know, but they were used to her. The one who comes, helps, doesn't say anything unnecessary. Some thought she was a volunteer. Others thought she was an unregistered caregiver. No one asked for her papers. Why would they? Every morning, Sophia would go to the door of room 8. Sometimes she'd bring jam, sometimes socks. She even brought the old lady a book, a detective novel she'd read in the basement when she was hiding from a storm. But she didn't ask her to read aloud. The names in the book were unfamiliar, But Sophia felt that they were all about her. There was nothing of her own in the city either. The market where she bought bread looked at her with strange eyes. The saleswoman with bangs was rude and never smiled. She always threw the change on the counter without looking. Once Sophia tried to smile, but the woman turned away. The bus. Always the same one, with greasy handrails. The same driver, wearing a baseball cap. The same look when Sophia got on. As if he was counting how many times she had ridden for free. But no one said anything. Because she gave them no reason to. No complaints, no requests. She just looked out the window. Sometimes she closed her eyes. Then everything disappeared, even time. In the evenings, she wrote letters. She didn't send them, she just wrote them. With her left hand. She wrote to an old woman as if she could read. You didn't recognize me. Or you do, but you're silent, just like back then. She wrote about the boarding school, about a girl who stood in the hallway with a suitcase and no one came, about a woman in blue who said, "You belong to the state now." Sophia didn't blame anyone. She had lived too long without complaints. Complaints are for those who hope. She had a routine. Get up, bring porridge, turn the pillow over, change her nightgown. Pain isn't a scream. Pain is when you don't expect anything, but you keep coming back. One evening, the door creaked. Her neighbor came in, a woman of about 50 with a face that looked like she was always asking a question. "You don't eat anything," she said. "Your legs are just bones. I made soup. You should eat it sometimes. You're always running to your grandmother. She doesn't even remember you." "Are you her nurse?" Sophia replied as usual. "Just because." "Yeah, right. We're all just doing it. Then it turns out that you're related to her, and she's putting the apartment in your name." Sophia stood up without looking. She closed the box of thread. She wanted to leave, slam the door, throw the pot at her neighbor's feet. But she just walked into the kitchen and put the kettle on. Metal scraped against the tiles. Behind her, there was silence, and then a phrase, spoken as if in jest, but which left a lump in her throat. "Your eyes look like you've been beaten up. Don't tell me everything's fine. People like you never have it fine." Sophia didn't answer. She just clenched the spoon so tightly that her fingers turned white. That night, she dreamed of a little girl. Small, in a pink sweater, with pigtails. She stood at the door and looked at the woman's face, who turned around and disappeared. There was fear in the girl's eyes, and in her hands was someone else's scarf. She woke up with her hair wet. Dawn was breaking on the windowsill, and it was day again. And again, it was Ward 8. Sophia walked slowly, but something had changed, somewhere inside, not loudly. It was as if a string that had been forgotten to be tuned had suddenly rung. For the 4th day in a row, the old woman looked at her particularly intently, not irritably, as before, not absent-mindedly, as usual, but as if she were waiting for something. Sophia felt this gaze as soon as she entered. She froze at the door, not reaching the bed. "Did you bring the jam?" the old woman asked hoarsely. "Yes," Sophia replied. Her voice was quiet, as if she were afraid to move. The old woman nodded toward the nightstand. "Put it there, and sit down." Sophia obeyed. She sat down on the edge of the chair. She didn't take off her coat. She didn't touch her scarf. "Why do you come to see me?" Sophia swallowed. This question had been hanging in the air for a long time, and now that it was out loud, it seemed as if everything had frozen. "I just want to," she said quietly. "Want to?" the old woman asked again. "But I don't want to. I don't want jam or these conversations. I don't like people. They're like flies. First they buzz, then they're shit. Sophia nodded. There was no trace of resentment on her face. The old woman continued, "But you're not a fly. You're like mold. Quiet, sticky. You get under my nails. I didn't call you here." It was probably the longest thing she had said in all the time they had known each other, and Sophia suddenly felt her fingers clench into fists, not out of anger, out of helplessness. "I can leave," she said. "Why don't you?" The old woman leaned forward. "Go. The door is open." Sophia stood up. Her heart was pounding in her throat. Her coat creaked at the seams. She walked toward the door, but before she could reach the handle, she heard behind her, "Wait." The voice had changed. It was trembling, a little confused. "I know you. I know you. I've seen your eyes. I know those eyes." Sophia froze. She didn't turn around. Her breath seemed to be trapped in her chest. She kept her hand on the handle, her fingers trembling. You're not," the old woman muttered. "Or are you?" Sophia turned around, slowly, as if 100 years weighed on her. She looked straight into the face of the woman who had called her empty, a curse, a mistake for years. But she said nothing. She just stared. And at that moment, the door to the ward opened. Standing in the doorway was another woman in a medical gown. "Someone's here to see you," she said to Sophia. "There's a man there. He says you're his relative. He's calling you by name. He says it's urgent." Sophia frowned. She hadn't told anyone where she lived, and certainly not her name. Not here. "What man?" she asked. "He says he's your brother, or your uncle, or... Anyway, it's urgent. You have to go." Sophia stood up. The old woman behind her was still staring at her back, silently, but no longer with irritation. It was as if she were looking at a photograph forgotten decades ago. The hall was empty. Only a man in a dusty coat stood by the window, his face hidden in shadows. He turned, saw her, and his eyes widened. "Sophia?" She flinched. She hadn't been called that in a very long time. She didn't answer. She just stared. Her jaw was clenched so tightly that her temples throbbed. I've been looking for you," he said. Sophia turned silently and walked out into the street. Inside, everything was screaming. But outside, there was no sound. Something shifted, and it was impossible to stop. Sophia sat on a concrete step behind the nursing home. Her coat was unbuttoned, her scarf was askew, and for the first time in a long time, the wind touched her face openly. It was cold and damp, as if it knew where to blow. Behind her, the staff door slammed. She could hear someone swearing about a lost ultrasound film, someone laughing. Life went on as usual, and Sophia sat there as if a piece of her past had just been cut off, thrown at her feet, and she had been told, "Well, go ahead. Now decide for yourself." "Brother," she whispered under her breath. "Uncle. Of course. Who else? Maybe even my father came back from the dead. Or my neighbor from the boarding school. Or those who knew, but kept quiet." She didn't go to see who it was. She just left, as always, quickly, quietly, without looking back. Leaving was her greatest skill. In the evening, she tried to fall asleep. To no avail. The bed felt foreign, the walls closer than before. Her reflection in the glass was distorted. Her features seemed sharp, like a woman who had kept her mouth shut and her fists in her pockets her whole life. "I wanted to," she whispered into the silence. "I just wanted to be there. No words, no names, no explanations." She remembered the old woman, the one who looked straight at her. She didn't recognize her, no, but she felt it. Almost. And then she remembered how she had said, "You're like mold." And for some reason, that was what hurt the most right now. because maybe she really had grown into that pain, like mold into cracks, because maybe it was easier that way, to be nobody, to be a shadow, to expect neither forgiveness nor dialogue. But now someone had said her name. Sophia returned to the table. She took out the envelope and unfolded the paper. She wrote one line. "I'm not coming for you. I'm coming for myself." Then she tore up the letter. Slowly, each strip with effort, as if she were peeling off old skin. The next day she came back. The same corridor, the same faces. The guard didn't look at her, as usual. But she stopped in front of room 8. Her hand was shaking, for the first time. What if everything had changed? She didn't know what was scarier, if she found out, or if she didn't. It was quiet inside. The old woman was asleep. Her lips trembled like a child having a bad dream. Sophia stood over her, clutching the jar of jam in her hands. "I didn't come back," she whispered. "I just didn't leave until the end." I put the jar down and straightened the blanket, as always. Everything was the same, but inside, it wasn't. Inside, everything was boiling. She knew she couldn't hold out like this for long. Either she would tell him or disappear forever, and if silence had once been her shield, now it was a noose. Late in the evening, she opened the desk drawer. She took out an old photograph, black and white with faded edges. A little girl on the porch. A woman stood next to her. The face was blurred, but the eyes were the same. Sophia ran her finger over the photo and whispered, "You may not remember, but I remember everything." The next morning, she made up her mind. One more day. The last day. Either she would tell him, or she would leave. Forever. The day began with rain. Low, sticky, like gray porridge. Sophia didn't wear a scarf for the first time in a long time. Her hair was pulled back in a bun, her face uncovered. No makeup, no jewelry, only her eyes. They seemed to be knocking from the inside. Today, or never. The guard at the entrance raised an eyebrow. "Going on a date?" She didn't answer. She just walked past him. The heavy door slammed behind her, and it became quieter inside. The corridor to Ward 8 seemed longer. She walked slowly. She had nothing in her hands. No bag, no blanket, no jar of jam. Empty. Like her chest, the old woman was sitting on the bed. She was writing something in a notebook, her glasses sliding down to the tip of her nose. At first, Sophia thought, run away, before it's too late. But her legs wouldn't obey her. You came again," said the old woman without looking up. Sophia approached her and sat down opposite her. She remained silent. "No cans today?" "I'm not a nurse today." The old woman narrowed her eyes. She put down her pen. She looked straight at her face. "So, who are you?" Sophia took a deep breath. Her heart was pounding in her throat. The words refused to come out, but she forced them out. I'm your granddaughter." Silence. Even the tap stopped dripping. Even her heart seemed to stop. The old woman didn't react. Her face became stony. "What nonsense is this? My name is Sophia. I'm your daughter. Your youngest daughter. I don't have any granddaughters," the old woman snapped. "You did. One. But I am her," Sophia interrupted. "You gave me away. You told my mother that I was a disgrace, that people like me should not be seen. You took her passport and took me to another city, and then you erased me. From her life, from her family, from everything." Her voice trembled. Her hands were shaking. But she looked straight into her eyes. The old woman was silent. Her lips trembled, but not from emotion, more from age. or from the inner storm that couldn't find a way out. I didn't come here to take revenge. I just wanted to understand. Anything. You're lying, whispered the old woman. You made it all up. You're not her. Sophia stood up. She walked over to the nightstand. She took the doll out of her pocket. The very same one. With one eye. Do you recognize it? The old woman stared. And for a moment, just a moment, something flickered in her gaze, as if through the years, through stubbornness, through fear, a yes broke through. But she turned away again. Bring me a blanket, she said. I'm cold. Sophia stood frozen. You're really going to pretend that nothing happened? I'm old. You can't tell my memory what to do, said the old woman, looking out the window. Sophia clenched her fists. She wanted to scream, to tear the sheets, to run away. But she took a step back. I understand. And she left. She walked down the hallway as if she had been struck. Not a sound, not a glance. A nurse passed by and nodded, but Sophia didn't notice. Her chest burned, not with fire, with ashes. She had done everything she could. She had crossed the line. She had opened up. And in response, she had been met with a wall. Only now that wall had cracked. She could feel it. And something inside her had cracked too. But it hadn't broken. Are you okay? The voice was soft, but confident. Sophia looked up. A guy about 25, wearing a burgundy vest with a badge that said, Thomas, Volunteer, written crookedly on it. He was carrying a box of books and had a backpack behind him. His hair was messy, his face tired, but there was a strange warmth about him, like someone who had learned too early that people could be cruel, and yet continued to be kind. No, she replied. I'm fine. Yeah, right, he grunted, sitting down on a bench opposite her. That's what people say when they come out of the ward looking like they've been hit with a shovel. Want some water? Sophia wanted to respond sharply, to say something like, none of your business, or shut your mouth, vest. But then she sighed and nodded. Thomas opened the bottle and handed it to her. She took a sip. Mineral water. It smelled like iron. Disgusting. But her throat felt better. Are you new here? She asked. Yeah. I got here a week ago. I'm a student. They send us here as part of a program. But I stayed. I like it here. Here? He shrugged. At least everything's honest here. Everyone knows why they're here. Everyone dies, just at different speeds. Sophia smiled. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't forced. And you? She hesitated. Then honestly, I'm not here on the program. I just came. It just happened. He nodded, not asking any more questions. He just nodded. And then he suddenly asked, Do you love her? Sophia froze. Who? The one you came from. There was something in your eyes, like people who really want to be believed. Even if it's too late. She looked at him for a long time, and then, for the first time, she said aloud, She's my grandmother. Thomas wasn't surprised. No gasps, no raised eyebrows, just, well, now a lot of things make sense. You were the child everyone was whispering about? Sophia didn't answer. Just rumors, he continued, that she kicked someone out once, something with her daughter, or her granddaughter. I didn't believe it. And now here I am, sitting with that someone. She looked at the floor. I didn't come for her. I came for myself. But I guess that was a mistake. I don't think so, he said. Sometimes, to find yourself, you have to go through those who broke you. He looked at her openly, without pity, without curiosity, just like a man who knows how to listen. You're not like them. You have kindness in your fingers, even if you don't like it yourself. Sophia snorted. Are you a poet? I've just seen too many old people die. There, at the bedside, people either get worse or better. You're the latter. He stood up and stretched. I have to go. Reading class. My blind grandmother wants me to read her trashy novels aloud. They're terrible, by the way. If you want, come listen. It can be fun sometimes. She nodded. Not yes. Not no. Just a nod. He left, and his words echoed in Sophia's head. To pull yourself together, you have to go through those who broke you. And suddenly, she felt a little lighter. Not because it was easier. It was because, for the first time in many years, someone saw her not as guilty, not as a disgrace, not as someone who should shut up and do as you're told, but as a human being. At first, it was awkward. She went into the room where Thomas was reading aloud and tried to hide in the corner, but his voice immediately singled her out. Here's Sophia, our new editor. You'll be checking to see if I've missed any commas. He spoke easily, confidently, as if he had known her for years. The old women at the table giggled. One, toothless, whispered to another, Is that the one who always keeps quiet? Not anymore, Thomas replied. She sat down. At first she just listened. Then she laughed. Real laughter, though quiet. Because it turns out, you can laugh, even if your whole life is wrapped up in a knot under your fingernails. On the third day, she read a paragraph herself, hoarsely, stumbling over her words. But her voice didn't tremble. The old woman with the eye patch clapped her hands. There you go. And you said you only knew how to bring porridge? Thomas winked. In the afternoon, she still came to Ward 8. Only now she didn't have a submissive look on her face. She looked into his eyes. Calmly. Without defiance, but firmly. The old woman pretended not to notice. But once she muttered, You're stubborn, it turns out, just like your mother. Sophia didn't answer then. She just adjusted her pillow. But her heart trembled. Her mother. The one they didn't talk about here. The one who had been erased, and who lived in her every movement. She began to run into Thomas more and more often. He didn't intrude. He didn't pressure her. But he was there. At some point, she caught herself thinking, if he suddenly didn't come, I would miss him. Why do you even come here? She asked him once. Why do you? Me. I come out of guilt. He shrugged. And I come out of anger. Anger at people who think old people are trash. I'm here to prove that's not true. And I'm here because I need to prove to myself that I'm not trash, that I'm still someone, that I have a right to be. He looked at her, and at that moment Sophia realized that he wasn't afraid of her truth. He wasn't running away from her. He didn't feel sorry for her. He was just listening. They went to the storeroom to look for books. Among the dust and rags, Thomas found an old vase, painted by hand. Look how beautiful it is, he said. It's cracked. But it's whole. He put it back, and Sophia suddenly asked, What if you knew that I was the one who was rejected? Would you still talk to me? I would talk even more, because you're not just a person. You're a survivor. Everything around them began to change. The taste of porridge became more distinct. The smell of wet linoleum no longer stung her nose. Even the guard suddenly said, You look refreshed. Are you in love? She didn't answer. She just walked past him. But there was color in her cheeks, and it was noticeable. Still, every day, a shadow remained. When she entered Ward 8 and heard the old woman pretending to be asleep, when she noticed that the doll had disappeared from the bedside table and then reappeared, as if someone had touched it during the night. When she heard the old woman talking to herself, whispering, "Sophia. No, it can't be. My eyes don't lie. But it's impossible." Sophia wanted to believe that everything was getting better, that the past was just dust. But she knew that dust, if you blow on it, flies into your eyes. And one day, it will surely blind you. It happened in the morning. At first glance, nothing special. Sophia entered the building as usual, clutching the keys to her apartment in her pocket, which she hadn't used for almost a week. Today she wasn't carrying a blanket or books, only herself. All of herself, without coverings. Ward 8 was open. Inside there was commotion. 2 nurses, a senior nurse, shouting. Sophia stood in the doorway. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. "What's going on?" "She fell," one of the women said. "She got up in the night, went somewhere, tripped, and hit her head. They found her only in the morning. Her blood pressure is all over the place. She's confused. Which way did she go?" "Who knows? She says she was looking for something. Or someone. She's delirious. She calls out names, then denies it." Sophia stepped closer. The old woman was lying on the bed, her eyes open but cloudy. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Only fragments. "No. You. It's the girl. I didn't want to." Sophia leaned over. She took her hand. It was cold and dry, like paper. "I'm here," she said. "I'm here." The old woman looked at her face for a long time, and then suddenly she trembled. Something flashed in her eyes. Recognition. Horror. Admission. "Sophia," she whispered. The silence thickened like syrup. "I'm sorry," the old woman breathed. "I was scared. Back then, I didn't know. I didn't know how. I just didn't want you to." Her lips were parched. Her voice broke. Her eyes rolled back. "Hey!" the nurse shouted. "Quick, get an IV." They pulled Sophia away. Everything spun. Plastic, white sheets, the smell of blood. An injection. Someone's loud voice on the radio. And her, standing in the corner, empty-handed. She didn't know what was worse. Hearing that "I'm sorry," or that it might be the last thing she ever heard. An hour later, the doctor said that her condition had stabilized, that the next 24 hours would be critical, that there should be no noise, and it was best not to touch her. And did she have any relatives? Sophia said nothing. Then she nodded. "Me." The doctor said nothing. He just wrote in his notebook, "Contact person." "Sophia." Thomas approached her in the corridor. His face was shadowed. "Did you know?" "What? That she's yours?" Sophia nodded. Thomas sat down next to her. "What now?" "I don't know." He was silent. Then he said, "You came here for answers. All you got was silence and nonsense." "Sometimes nonsense is more than I expected," she said. "And sometimes, less than I need." They sat in silence, like brother and sister, stitched together from different kinds of pain. Later, in the storeroom, Sophia found an old folder with archives. The nurse had left it on the shelf, forgetting to close it. Sophia opened it. Inside were medical records, notes, and discharge papers. One piece of paper was thinner than the rest, almost transparent. On it was a short note. "The patient refuses to talk about her family. She was seen destroying personal photographs. She confirms, 'I have no family.'" Sophia clenched the sheet as if it were her throat. Then she let go. She folded it neatly and put it back in its place. "Now you have a family," she thought. And immediately after that, she was frightened by her own words, because from that moment on, there was no turning back. It all started with a piece of paper. A day after the old woman fell, when Sophia arrived at the nursing home, she was handed a sheet printed on a faded printer. The tone was neutral, the wording as if washed in bleach. We kindly request confirmation of your relationship to the patient in room 8 in connection with alleged legal issues concerning inheritance, transfer of guardianship, and possible last will and testament signature, date, stamp, full stop. Sophia read it twice. Then she simply folded the sheet and put it in her pocket. She walked down the corridor as if in a dream. Every word echoed in her head, as if someone were hitting her with a hammer. Inheritance, guardianship, family ties. It felt as if someone, somewhere in the shadows of the archives, had decided. If she came, it means she wants something. We need to keep an eye on her. What if she's a fraud? Later, in the room, the nurse looked at her differently. Not directly, but from the corner of her eye, with a squint. I hear you're not a stranger to her. No. You were silent earlier. Clever. I didn't know how. You didn't know, of course. And now that you know, you're here every day. Suddenly you care. There was no envy in the nurse's voice, not even anger. Rather, something painfully familiar. You're here because you want something, and I've been here for years, and I have nothing. Sophia didn't answer. She left. But inside, everything tightened up. Again, the same cycle. Thomas came later. He brought tea in a thermos and apples. He sat down next to her. He looked at her for a long time. They started talking, he said, about you. That you came because of the apartment. That you're not a granddaughter, but an actress. That you forged your documents. I don't have any documents, she said bitterly. No photos, no letters. I'm a hole in the fabric. He didn't laugh. He just nodded. I believe you. She smiled stiffly, as if it didn't matter anymore. Let them talk. They talked back then, too. When I was born, when my mother hid me in strangers' apartments, when my grandmother once simply wouldn't let us into the house, they always have something to discuss. And you? I need to understand who I am if I don't even have a past. And is it worth continuing if every time there's only darkness? The next day, the guard didn't let her in right away. What right do you have, sweetheart? I'm to room 8. Yes, I know, but now they require confirmation. They said not to let anyone in without written permission until everything is cleared up. I'm sorry. Sophia looked at his face and felt something heavy and rusty boiling inside her. I come here every day. I wash her, feed her, take care of her. I don't make the decisions. I just follow orders. I have nothing against you, honestly. She stood at the glass door, behind which someone was already tidying up the bed in Ward 8. Someone else. Not her. It was as if she had been erased. Again. Softly. Politely. According to instructions. That night, she sat on the floor for a long time. At her feet were letters, the ones she had written but never sent. The handwriting changed, from smooth to shaky, from angry to almost childish. I miss you. She picked up one, the oldest. There were only 2 lines. I'm 5. I'm not crying anymore. I'm just waiting. When you come, tell me it was a dream. Sophia laughed. Quietly. Hollowly. Like people who have nothing left but irony. There you go, sweetie, she whispered to herself. You wanted the truth? Here you go. You wanted a family? Here you go. With gloves and complaints. In the morning, she arrived before everyone else. She stood at the gate. She didn't talk to anyone. She looked at the window of the ward. The light was on. That meant she was still alive. That meant there would be another chance, even if the whole world was against her again. Sophia no longer went inside. The door with the sign, "No unauthorized persons allowed," became a border that she couldn't even look across. At first, she came every day. She stood at the gate like a dog that had been forgotten as a puppy and was now unrecognizable. Then she came every other day. Then she just sat at the bus stop opposite, pretending to wait for a bus that would never come. The old woman disappeared. Not physically. She was simply hidden away. In another ward, in another wing, under a different surname. That's what they do when they don't want any trouble. When it's easier to erase than to admit. One evening, there was a knock on her door. It was the same nurse with the squint. "I've been thinking," she said without coming in. "You may really be her granddaughter. But you know what they say? People who are silent for a long time are hiding something." Sophia stared at her without blinking. Silence was all she had left. Answers no longer worked. The nurse pursed her lips. "She's in isolation now. The doctor said she's unstable, suspected dementia, and she keeps repeating your name. She asks why you don't come. She only calls you by your maiden name, probably your mother's maiden name." Sophia shuddered. So she remembered after all. Then, in that moment. But now it's too late. They decided you were bad for her, that you're a trigger, that it's better to protect her. It's safer that way. Sophia closed her eyes. "Safer," she whispered. "What did you think? That you'd say, 'I'm her granddaughter,' and they'd open their arms to you? It doesn't work like that here. Here, if you want them to let you in, you have to prove that you're not a threat first. And if I'm a threat, then all the more reason to stay away." 2 days later, a letter arrived. No envelope, just a sheet of paper printed out with signatures, a stamp, and the phrase, "We see no reason to consider your words credible. According to internal protocol, the patient is restricted from unwanted contact. Your visits are prohibited until further notice." No, dear. No, we regret. Just procedure. Sophia put the letter on the table next to her cup of tea. She stared at it for a long time, as if it were a sentence with no term specified. Thomas came home late. He sat down on the windowsill. He was silent. "I can't go to her anymore," Sophia said. He nodded. "She asks about you." Slowly, over and over. And then she freezes and whispers, "I was afraid. I was afraid. I was scared." Like a prayer. Sophia turned to the window. Outside, a light rain was falling. "I thought that if I just stayed, if I was there, she would understand. And that would be enough. But now I understand. Being close isn't enough. Sometimes being close burns you more than being far away. It's not your fault." She looked at him. Her eyes were dry. Her voice was steady. "Then whose fault is it? She's afraid. I'm ashamed. Everyone else is indifferent. And there's silence in the air. Which one of us is in charge?" He didn't answer. "I don't want to fight anymore. I thought that if I pulled this thread, we would become a family. But it seems that we have been strangers for a long time. We just have the same eyes." At night, she went out into the street, without a jacket, without a scarf. She sat down on the steps and looked at the sky. There wasn't a single star. "That's it," she thought. "I've come full circle, back to where I started, where no one knew my name, where no one would let me in. And now, here I am again." She didn't cry. She just sat there, like a wall, like concrete, like a shadow that had faded away. The room breathed with musty warmth. The old oil-filled radiator clicked, as if to remind her, "I'm still here. Don't hope for peace." In the corner, the clock ticked, not loudly, but insistently. Every second was like a hammer striking iron. Sophia sat at the table. In front of her was an open box of letters. She sorted through them slowly, her fingers trembling like an old woman's. Some of the sheets were stained. Others were just scraps. Somewhere it said, "Mom." Somewhere, "I'm still here." Somewhere, nothing but torn paper. She took out the oldest one. It was handwritten. The ink faded. The paper yellowed. The handwriting was childish, uneven. "I'm not angry. I just miss you. You know I understand everything, even if you don't say it." She read as if for the first time, as if these words had been written not by her, but by someone else. Kinder, brighter. Someone who was no longer there. She stood up. She walked over to the mirror. The face was unfamiliar, haggard, pale, with shadows under her eyes. "Who are you?" she asked. "Daughter? Granddaughter? Clingy? Mold?" Only her reflection answered. "I didn't ask for love. I asked for recognition. Just, I remember you. Just, you're mine." She closed her eyes, and she saw. Her mother, young and breathless, holding her hand, leading her across the yard. Her grandmother stood at the door, her lips pressed together, wrinkles around her mouth. "I won't let her go. I don't need her to be my disgrace. She's not my granddaughter. This is your mistake." And her mother replied, "She's not a mistake. She's mine. And if you kick us out, you're not just losing her. You're losing me." And then her grandmother turns and walks away, and her mother cries, quietly, but so that something inside Sophia breaks, even now, years later. Sophia sat back down to the letters. One by one, she folded them, neatly and carefully, as if she were preparing them for burial. "I haven't forgiven you," she whispered, "and I probably never will. But I don't want to live with this pain anymore. I don't want to be a shadow. I don't want to wait until they let me in. I'm not a child standing with a suitcase anymore." She took a deep breath. "I'm not a mistake." The words came out simply, without drama, without shouting, almost in a whisper. But at that moment, she realized this was the truth, the first truth of her entire life. She took out the old doll, the very same one. One eye was looking up, the other had long since been lost. It was worn, but intact. "You know," she said to the doll, as if it could answer, "you've kept me safe for so many years. And all this time I thought I needed their acceptance. But maybe I needed to accept myself." The doll was silent, but now the silence didn't scare her. Towards morning, she went out into the street again. The cold pressed against her face, but inside she was warm. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if they would ever let her in. She didn't know if her grandmother would remember her, if anything would change. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel useless. Because now she had a name. She had a voice. And most importantly, she had the right to leave if they kicked her out again. But not as an outcast, as someone who had made her own choice. She woke up without an alarm clock. The light outside the window was dim and gray. Normal, but inside it was different. Not easier, just clearer. Sophia got up and went to the sink. The cold water burned her face. She didn't look away from the mirror. There were dark circles under her eyes. Her hair was tousled. Her lips were dry. But in her eyes there was something that hadn't been there for a very long time. calmness. Not hope, not pain, not resentment. Just inner peace. She didn't put on her coat. She took her jacket and left her scarf on the coat rack. She dressed simply, without her mask, and she left. Her steps down the stairs were steady, not furtive, not hurried. She didn't stop at the entrance to the nursing home. She walked in, calmly, like someone who has a right to be there. No explanations, no excuses. The security guard rose from his stool. "You again?" "I told you." Sophia looked him straight in the eye. "You have no right to stop me. You have no document or order restricting personal visits. I am not violating the rules. I will pass." He opened his mouth, then closed it. He muttered something, but didn't stop her. She walked past him, and for the first time in days, she didn't feel like a thief. She walked like a person who finally owed nothing to anyone. The same nurse was standing outside the ward. She was holding a syringe. Her face was clouded with confusion. "What are you doing here? I'm not allowed in here? You were told clearly that you're not allowed. No one showed me any official document. You forbade me with words. And now I'm here. And I'll stay until she tells me to leave herself. Is that clear?" The nurse blushed. She pressed her lips together, but she backed away. Sophia entered. The old woman was lying on her side. Her gaze was fixed on the wall. But when Sophia sat down next to her, she stirred, not immediately, but slowly turned her gaze. It's me." Silence. "Are you still coming here?" "Not for you. For myself." The old woman turned away. Then she looked again. She bowed her head. She was silent for a long time. Why? Because I had to say it. I grew up in a hole, a black hole without light. I'm the one you wrote off. I lived without a name, without explanations, without belonging. I'm the one you were ashamed of. And you know what? She leaned closer. She spoke calmly. "I'm not asking you for love. I'm not a child. I'm not asking for recognition. But I won't live like I don't exist anymore. I exist. And my name is Sophia." Her voice didn't tremble. Not a single muscle moved. The old woman looked at her face, and in her eyes, it was impossible to tell what she was feeling. Fear, pain, surprise, or all of it at once. "I have no one to ask for forgiveness," she whispered. "I don't know how." "You don't have to," said Sophia. "Just don't lie anymore. Not to yourself, not to me." She went out into the hallway. Thomas was waiting by the wall. "Well?" "She said she doesn't know how to ask for forgiveness." "And you?" Sophia sighed. "I wasn't waiting for him. I needed to say what I had to say. And now I have." He nodded. Then suddenly he held out an envelope. "This is for you. She asked me to give it to you if you showed up. She gave it to me that day, before she was transferred." Sophia took it and opened it. Inside was an old note, a napkin written in pencil. "If I knew how to love, you would have been the first. I'm sorry I didn't know how. I remember your eyes." She didn't cry, but something inside her let go. It was as if a tight corset had burst. "What are you going to do now?" Thomas asked. Sophia looked out the window. There were clouds, and beyond them, something else. Live, not as someone else's mistake, but as my own. Without other people's lists, without permission. She took his hand. "I'm not mold. I'm a root, the kind that survives in stone." The room was warm, too warm. The windows were fogged up. Oranges lay on the windowsill. Someone had brought them as a gift, but no one had eaten them. The old woman lay on her side, her back rounded, as if the whole world were pressing down on her. Sophia sat on a chair by the bed. She had no coat, no scarf, her palms open on her knees. They were silent. 10 minutes passed. Then the old woman spoke. Her voice was weak, like a shadow of its former self. I thought if I kept quiet, everything would be erased. Time, faces, words. But it doesn't erase, it just puts it in a deep box, and then it comes back, with interest. Sophia listened without interrupting. I don't know why I did it then. I was probably scared. Scared of what people would say, what they would think, what would happen. But most of all, I was scared that I wouldn't be able to cope, that you would become a mirror for me, and I couldn't stand myself even when I was normal. She sighed. I kept hoping that you would disappear, forget, dissolve, but you came, right to my face, and I suddenly realized I was afraid of you because you're better than all of us. Sophia smiled, a little skeptically. Me? Better? You remained human, and I hid behind my age, my status, my silence. All I had was pride and fear, a bad combination. Sophia looked at her. The old woman's eyes were full of water, but not tears, more like fatigue, and something that looked like the truth. I don't need your forgiveness, Sophia said. That's not why I came. I needed to know that I wasn't crazy, that it all happened, that I didn't make it up. It happened, the old woman nodded. I gave you away. I told your mother you were a stranger to me. I did it all, with my own hands. Why? Because I thought I was saving the family. But I was saving myself, from shame, from rumors, from the fear of being weak. And did it work? No, she replied. I was just left alone, proud on the outside, empty on the inside. They fell silent again. Then Sophia stood up. She went to the window. She wiped the fogged glass. Outside the window was a gray alley, a couple of trees, 2 volunteers with a stroller. Everything was as usual, only inside it was no longer the same. I'm leaving, she said. The old woman nodded. I know. But not because I haven't forgiven you. It's because I want to live. Without you. Without expectations. Without holes. Just to live. She took the old doll from the nightstand. The very same one. One eye was looking up again, as if waiting for the end. I'll leave this. If you want, take a look. If not, throw it away. It's not my pain anymore. The old woman took the doll. She ran her finger over it. It had a second eye. We all had a second eye once, replied Sophia, until we were taught to look in only one direction. Thomas was waiting by the wall in the hallway. She nodded. Everything. Everything, she replied, or at least enough. They went outside. It was cold. Fine snow fluttered in the air like salt. Sophia took a deep breath. Now it's my turn to live. The kitchen was the same. Small, old, with peeling walls and a stove that hummed like an offended old woman. The same can opener stood on the windowsill, only now there was a cup of hot tea next to it, and a plate with 2 pancakes. No fuss, no ritual, just food. For herself. Sophia sat at the table. In her hands was a letter, or rather, what was left of it, a piece of paper napkin with words written in pencil. She didn't reread it. She knew it by heart. If I knew how to love, you would be the first. I remember your eyes. On the windowsill, between a jar of jam and a book, stood an old doll, with one eye. Not hidden. Not hidden, but not on display either. Just where it belonged, without shame, without legends. Sophia got up. She put the kettle on. She went to the window. She opened it. Fresh air rushed into the room, as if someone had reopened the doors to life. Outside, there were the sounds of the city, the rustle of tires, a dog barking. Someone was arguing in the yard. Someone was laughing. But inside it was quiet. Not hollow, not oppressive, just truly peaceful. Not because everything worked out, but because enough is enough. If this story touched you, write one word in the comments. I see. This is for those who know what it's like to be there, but remain invisible. We read every word you write,